So of course I want to welcome, so sincerely welcome, Gretchen Evans as our keynote speaker. She is a U.S. Army Command Sergeant Major retired, and I'm going to have Dale Goff introduce her. He is the owner of Dogtopia, that he'll talk about a little bit, and then we'll just get this program started because we have a lot to listen to.
Thank you so very much. Yes, my name is Dale Goff, and we own Dogtopia, which is a national dog daycare. We have about 200 stores nationally, and locally we just opened our first one in August. It's on Chinden, right across from the Riverside Hotel. And the reason that my wife and I were attracted to Dogtopia is, in addition to being a great service of daycare for dogs and boarding and spa and all that, we also have our mission is to help raise money for the Dogtopia Foundation, which sponsors service dogs for disabled vets. We also have a youth literacy program where we bring dogs into schools and libraries for children to read out loud to dogs, and it helps the children's proficiency. And then we do employment for adults with autism. And that was particularly of interest to us because our two youngest children we adopted from Russia are on the autism spectrum, and so that allows them to be very much involved with Dogtopia. And so, as part of the national foundation that we have, Gretchen Evans is our sponsor, is our speaker, is the sponsor for us of our connection in with the military and the vet community. And so I'm very pleased to have her. She made Boise the first of her national tour. So after this, she continues to go on, and she'll be going around the nation doing similar kind of speaking engagements. But to give you the best, I think to let you know who she is, I have a video here that was done. She recently won a very prestigious award for her service, and I think this gives you a good sense of it, and then we'll have her come up and speak, and you'll be able to ask questions as well. So, okay.
I talked to the troops, and I said, we have a decision to make. We can stay right here and try to hold until we get reinforcements, or we can try to make it to the top of the mountain, which would be better terrain for us to defend ourselves. The decision is mine to make, and I decided we were going to try to get to the top of the mountain. The enemy was pursuing us, and we finally got to the top. We decided that was going to be our last stand. And I kept radioing back and said, okay, now I'm at the top of the mountain and they're coming, and I'm low on ammo, and this is not looking good to me. So we laid down and we took our magazines and we stacked them. And we said, okay, bring it. And then I heard it before I ever saw it, that beautiful sound of a helicopter. It's Apaches, you know, still makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, flew over us, you know, and fired those missiles into those enemy troops that had been pursuing us, and took care of that. And as we're pulling away, I thought to myself, I just spent a lifetime on that mountain. I left 3 men on that mountain. And actually, I left part of myself on that mountain. I went to the pilot and I said to him, thank you for saving us. And he goes, Sergeant Major, we were listening to you all morning on the radio. We were not going to leave you on that mountain. And I just said, thank you. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that, I really do. And he goes, that's my job. That's what I do.
Gretchen Evans' courage and leadership was tested that day in Afghanistan. And yet, there would be many more difficult days ahead. 6 months after that mission, she found herself in harm's way again. As she commanded her troops to take cover, a mortar blast threw her against a bunker head first. She'd survive, but be placed in a medically induced coma.
On the day that they decided to wake me up, the young Army doctor was standing right next to my bed. We had a dry erase board, and he was writing on it with a marker, and he waved to me like this to get my attention, and he flipped it over, and he wrote the words, "You're deaf." And so I took the board from him and I wiped it off with my hand. I wrote the word "forever" and showed it to him, and he nodded his head.
Her 27-year military career, spanning her entire adult life, was over. Diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury and severe PTSD along with her deafness, her re-entry into the civilian world became an all-too-familiar veteran's tale.
And all of a sudden, I had to shift into a world that I didn't understand and had not been a part of. I felt worthless because I didn't think I could contribute anything to life anymore, and I wanted to die. The way I was dealing with the grief was I ran and I ran and I ran to obsession. I was running 12, 13, 14 miles a day. I wasn't eating. I was trying to disappear.
One day out on the road, Gretchen was struck and nearly killed by a cyclist she couldn't hear coming.
He threw me into traffic. I can still remember smelling that burned rubber. One of my doctors looked me right in the face and he said to me, "Gretchen, you can't do the things you used to do anymore. You've changed." And I felt like this door was closing, and if I didn't stick my foot in this closing door, I was going to lose my life. And I thought, no, I want my life back.
On the brink of giving up hope, Gretchen reached out to an organization called America's Vet Dogs, a group that provides service dogs to veterans living with disabilities.
I wrote an email to them and said, "I have a traumatic brain injury. I'm deaf. I have severe PTSD. Can you help me?" And I hit send. An email pops up. There was one word on that email: yes.
I never held my hand out and asked for something free. I don't need you to lower the bar for me.
I got the coolest set of ears you could ever imagine.
All throughout her recovery, Gretchen relied closely on a support system she thought of as a rope team, a military reference dictating that if one member of a group falls down, the others tied together pick them back up to continue on their journey, all together.
As you go through the highs and the lows of your life, everybody should have a rope team. You almost can't survive without one.
So with the help of new friends and old, Gretchen began her road back. She found a number of veterans organizations and soon began doing what she'd always done best: lead.
I felt like a sergeant major all over again. I just didn't wear the same uniform. I wore this, but I was still helping people be successful in their life.
In the years since, Gretchen has become a face of the veterans advocacy movement. She repurposed her passion, running, competing in more than 30 marathons and forming Team Unbroken, a group of veteran and civilian athletes with disabilities who take part in adventure races all over the world.
To cement who we are as a team and that we're not quitters.
I'm broken and it's beautiful. I'm broken and it's beautiful. I'm broken and it's beautiful. Yes!
They've raised tens of thousands of dollars for veterans organizations and have tied themselves together as a new rope team. Wounded, perhaps, but very much unbroken.
My guys, do hard things. Learn what grit can do for you, because it's a feeling deep down inside of here when you think you've taken your last step that you still can take 10 more. And once you do that, it can propel you so far.
I'm broken and it's beautiful.
Okay, please join me in welcoming Major Gretchen Evans. Here, there we go.
We'll see how long he lasts there. Okay, so first of all, I want to say thank you all for taking the time out of your busy days to come here and for this event. And what an incredible venue this is. I've spoke at all kinds of places, but I can honestly say that I couldn't be in a better place than surrounded by history of military people who have given their lives for our country and the people who have supported them doing that. So I'm just gonna, you saw most of my history already on the little clip, but I'm just gonna talk a little bit about it, and then we're gonna get right into what the real meat of this is, and that is the fact that I believe, hang on, Rusty, I need you to sit. You wanna be down? Sit. Down. That dogs save lives. He certainly saved mine. So as you saw, I was a command sergeant major, and that's the highest non-commissioned officer rank in the military at the time when I had the mission on the mountain, and then when I was wounded, I was the command sergeant major of 30,000 troops under a 3-star command in Afghanistan, and one of the very, very few women who have ever been able to do that. When I came back after I got injured, my world was upside down. And I didn't have a plan B. I had 27 years in, but we were at war in Afghanistan and Iraq at the same time. And so thoughts of retirement were nowhere on my radar, okay? Because I still could have served until I was 60 years old, and I was 46 when I was wounded. So the last thing on my mind was, what's next? I was thinking I got 15 more years in the military. And then I woke up one day in Landstuhl and I was told that I no longer could serve my country, that you cannot be deaf and serve on active duty, that I was going to be taking my uniform off, not by my choice, but by the military's choice. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't have a plan B. I had been deployed so many times since 9/11 that I didn't even have a hard address. I had a post office box, my car had been in storage since 2001, and I had a barracks room at Fort Bragg. That was my life. And all of a sudden, I had to find a new me. And this was after 18 months of rehabilitation when it really hit. After you get your body put back together from the rocket blast. And I went to lip reading school and I learned how to read lips. And I went and dealt with my head injury. And then I had like a million little tiny pieces of shrapnel all over my body that weren't protected by my flak jacket. And after all that was done, I had a doctor at the VA look me in the eyes, and rightfully so. And he said, Gretchen, this is as good as it's going to get for you. And that was a hard pill for me to swallow because I was still deaf and I still had a brain injury and nobody would hire me. So part of the transition, and this happens to a lot of veterans, not just me, and I want you to know as I'm up here speaking, it's not just me. I want you to visualize the tens of thousands, if not hundred thousands of warriors who are just like me, who went through the same thing. I just happen to be one that's here speaking to you today. I am nothing special. There are so many people who experience these very same things that I'm talking about. So when I transitioned out of the military and I started trying to provide for myself, okay, because living on your disability and even a pension is really not enough to sustain a livelihood. And so I remember my very first job interview, and it wasn't even a very good job, but I needed a job, and I had filled out what I thought was a pretty impressive resume. I mean, I was very decorated. I commanded 30,000 troops. That's a big business. I had a multi-million-dollar budget that I managed. I got in food in a foreign country under fire. I mean, I thought was pretty impressive. But as I sat across from this, the guy that was interviewing me, and he looks up after reading all this and he says, "Can you type?" I said, "Yes, I can type." And I knew then that this was going to go sideways, okay? I mean, right then that this was not going to be end pretty. And then he looked at me with all seriousness and he says, what else can you do? And then I got snarky, okay? And I said, I'm deadly accurate with a hand grenade. And that's where the interview ended, and I did not get that job, okay? So it's, you know, we laugh, but it's true. It's hard for us. I know our skills translate to the civilian world, but it's hard to articulate that. You know, we're better at it than we were certainly 5 years ago when I really needed it. But anyway, after this really harsh transition, and you heard how I got my service dog, let me tell you, I was on my last straw. I had tried everything else: medication, meditation, swimming with sharks, which was not helpful. I tried going on hikes. I tried everything that I could try to do to try to find my mojo back, to try to find a reason to live, to try to find how I'm going to navigate this PTSD and this brain injury, and how I'm going to learn to live in a world that I had been removed from for 27 years. So I went into the military at 19, you know, a young adult, and I was wounded at 46. That's a lifetime, okay? I had not been a civilian in a long time. So I was desperate, and so when I got hit by the bicycle, and I took me into a doctor, and my doctor was admonishing me, saying, you can't do the things that you used to do, Gretchen. You're not the same person. You're disabled. And I wanted to say, I'm not disabled. I have some disabilities. I do, okay? I am deaf, okay? And I have a brain injury, and I do have PTSD. But those don't define me or what I can accomplish, and I will not let them do that. The enemy took away my career, but I'm not going to let them take away my life. And so I was grasping onto anything that would bring me hope. And so when they recommended maybe I try and get a service dog, I went home and I searched the internet for organizations that did dogs for people like me. And they were very specific. We do dogs for brain injuries, and we do dogs for PTSD, and we do dogs for mobility, and we do dogs for this. But I didn't find one place that said we do dogs for deaf people. And that was the one injury that I needed the most help with. Because when you go from being a hearing person for 46 to being a totally deaf person, your whole world changes, okay? You have to learn how to re-communicate. I could not drive legally because I couldn't hear emergency vehicles. They took away my independence. I couldn't get a job because nobody would hire a deaf PTSD person with a brain injury. They took away a way for me to provide for myself. I was hopeless. So when I found America's Vet Dog, their mission statement said this: we provide dogs to veterans and first responders with any disability free of cost. And I said, there it is. It's in their mission statement. So when I wrote this email and I listed all my disabilities, and at the last sentence that I wrote was, can you help me? And I sat there and I said a little prayer to myself, because I thought if I hear one more no, or I get one more door slammed in my face, or if I feel like that I can no longer contribute to the world, I don't want to be here anymore. And I was in a very fragile place in my life. And I asked myself before I sent that email, are you ready to be rejected again, Gretchen? Because if you're not, you should be careful, because this might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So I hit send, and I sat there and I went on the internet and was on Facebook or whatever I was doing. And all of a sudden, you know, you get that preview screen. And it hadn't been 15 minutes. And I thought, that's like a jury. That's not a good sign when a jury comes back in 15 minutes, okay? Because it usually takes longer to answer in the positive than it does the negative. It's easy to say no. It's easy to say guilty. So I thought, oh, that's not good news, okay? But I opened it, and all that was on there was the word yes. And all of a sudden, for the first time since I got blown up, I had a little bit of hope that maybe this service dog, this hearing service dog, was going to change my life. What I did not know at the time is that America's Vet Dog had never trained a hearing dog. But when they received my email, they sat around and they said, oh my goodness, we train dogs to do all kinds of things. Why can't we train a hearing dog? And what they also said was this: we're not going to say no to this veteran. This veteran is asking for help. This veteran is reaching out to us as an organization that says we will train dogs for any disability. And just because we've never done it before doesn't mean we can't. And that was a bold move on America's Vet Dogs' part, because they said yes before they knew how to do it. And there was power in the word yes. It gives people hope, and it changed my life. So I went and I got my first service dog. Her name was Aura, and she was wonderful. The first hearing dog America's Vet Dogs ever trained. And now I have Rusty, and I've had Rusty almost 3 years. And he's wonderful. He's a little bit of a nutter, but he's wonderful, okay? He does all the hearing stuff he needs to do, but he's a male lab adolescent, and he's a little cuckoo, okay? But I like that about him. I'm just telling you, because he might do something cuckoo here in a minute. I want everybody to be prepared. Doesn't mean he's not a good service dog. He just has a little personality, just like I do. So my affiliation with Dogtopia, and first of all, let me just, before I get off track, let me tell you about Dale. Dale's got the biggest heart I've ever met in a human being. He is a businessman, okay, trying to make a business here in your community. But what Dale really cares about is not that bottom line, okay? He cares about your dogs, he cares about you, he cares about his business and what services he can provide for you. But what Dale really cares about is changing lives. And that's why I'm here today. He was the first one who stepped up and said, I want to bring Gretchen to my hometown, and I want to talk about dogs save lives through the Dogtopia Foundation. So the Dogtopia Foundation provides funds to organizations that train service dogs so that people like me and first responders can have dogs that change our lives and save our lives. And it's not inexpensive. It takes money to train these dogs. For an example, the way Rusty is trained was this. So he gets bred and he gets born, and in 8 weeks he goes to prison and does time, okay? Goes in there and he's raised by a prisoner who's been taught basic dog obedience. And he's with that prisoner 24/7, Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, what we have are what we call puppy raiser families. And they come pick up the puppies on Friday, and they keep them till Sunday, and they take them to church, and they take them to the restaurants, and they take them on airplanes, and they take them on trains, and they introduce them to children, and sitting at restaurants, and all this. They socialize these dogs. And then on Sunday, they go back to prison. And they're in prison, depending on the dog, what their sentence is, somewhere between 16 and 18 months, based on the dog's behavior. Sometimes they get out for good behavior early. Rusty was a slow learner. Rusty spent 18 months in prison. Okay. So then they go, after they finish their time in prison, they go to the campus, which is in Long Island, okay? And America's Vet Dogs has been providing dogs for veterans since the end of World War II. They were the very first organization that started training dogs for veterans who were coming back from World War II. And so they just expanded from the Guide Dog Foundation to now America's Vet Dogs. So as a veteran, I go to their campus. They've trained Rusty to be a hearing dog for me, and Rusty and I spend 2 weeks every day together, 24/7, so that I know what Rusty can do. And when Rusty doesn't do what he's supposed to do, it's not Rusty's problem, it's my problem. It's always the person's problem with the dog, because the dogs know what to do, okay? They want to make sure that you know how to handle your dog and get the most out of them. They recertify these dogs every year, and they make sure that they're well taken care of. And it's a wonderful program, and it saved my life. And I hear from all my veterans friends that it saves their lives too. And if any of you are just pet owners, then you know what a dog does to your life, right? That unconditional love, that no judgment, that I'm glad to see you even though you've been gone only 3 seconds, okay? They will follow you into the bathroom. I can't get up and go get a glass of water without Rusty coming in to help me, okay? And that's wonderful, because that's how dedicated he is for me. And that was the silver bullet that brought me from despair and suicidal thoughts to have a new passion and purpose in life, which is this. And this is helping my fellow veterans, okay, all of us, live the best life that we can live in spite of the barriers we might be facing, whether it be injuries or whatever it may be, through getting a service dog into their hands. And anybody who wants one, I want them to have one, and that's why we're raising money. So I have two things to ask you if you're sitting here. That if anything I said resonated with you, you know, feel how important this mission is that you'll go back there to Dale, because through his Dogtopia store, okay, he can hook you up with giving money through the foundation that will sponsor a dog that will someday be a service dog to a veteran who is in need for one, and you will be saving a life. I don't know how else to say that, but honestly, when you go home today and you stand in front of the mirror, maybe tonight when you're getting ready for bed, I want you to look yourself in the mirror and say, I made a difference today because I gave to a cause that's going to save somebody's life. And you don't get to say that every day. Not very often do we get to say that. Whether it's $10 or $20 or $100 or $6,000 is what it costs to sponsor a puppy. And then that puppy grows up and becomes a service dog. And they stay with you sometimes 8 to 10 years, depending on the dog. That is a small investment for such a large return of investment. That's a small price to pay to save someone's life. So I want to thank you, first of all, for having me here today. It was a privilege. I'm in love with your museum. I love your mountains. Dale put me in the hotel right next to the green belt. I'm having the time of my life. But I really want you to understand is that I want to be part of your community. I want to help you guys in any way that I can. And I really am asking from the bottom of my heart to support Dale and his great big old heart, because he wants to sponsor a dog so bad he gets bit, okay? And so we want to make that happen for him today. I'm going to end my official talk right now. If you have a question you want to ask me, whether it be about service dogs, whether it be about the Dogtopia Foundation, whether it be about my service or what else I do, please raise your hand. If you're really far from me, if you would come close so I can read your lips, that would be beneficial to me. And I thank you so very much for being here today. I know that time is precious and you took time to be here. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
When you're in trouble, a siren is coming, or a car. What does he do?
Okay, let's show him. Rusty, stand. Okay, so what he does, he goes, alert, alert. So he taps me. So in the car, he's in the car with me. He will tap me. And if it's an emergency vehicle, he will look the way the emergency vehicle is coming, so I know where it's coming. And he taps me for any sound. If my phone goes off, he'll tap me. And my command to him is, where's the sound? And then he takes me to the sound. The washer, the dryer, the microwave. I'm not so crazy about the dryer, but you got to get the laundry out. Okay, when my husband calls my name, we call him the marriage saver. Okay, I'm in a different room. My husband wants me, how frustrating it is. So he will hear lives with a deaf person. Maybe not totally deaf, but a hearing impaired person. Yeah.
Can you go on the stage with him?
Oh, you want me to demonstrate? So the other thing, I'm going to show you just one little demonstration. The other thing that I didn't really talk about with Rusty is, and I showed Dale this at the conference, and he found this amazing, is that Rusty does nightmare interruption. So if I'm in the middle of a nightmare, rather than suffer through that, because the longer you're in a nightmare, the more traumatic it is for you, okay? The less you are traumatized by that nightmare. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to show you what Rusty does to wake me up in a nightmare. Now this is going to be a little different for him because I don't normally sleep on a stage in full uniform. But I think that Rusty will do this. Is that amazing or what? Yeah. So, and you know, he saved my life. So we have shirts that you can buy too. I've got one. Have you got one?
No, but I'll put it up there.
I'll
Okay,
put it up on the
so
screen.
we have shirts that you can buy that says "Dogs Save Lives." I've got one in my backpack, and Dale was going to show you how you can get one. All the proceeds from those Dogs Save Lives go to the foundation, which goes to an organization that trains these dogs. Any other questions?
Let's have the microphone.
Oh, there you go. That'll have
I want to totally reinforce everything you have just said. I am hearing impaired. I'm not totally deaf, but there's a lot of sounds, especially high frequencies, that I don't hear. And through Canine Companions for Independence, I've received a hearing dog. And she alerts me just like Renzi, alert.
Yep.
She will alert me just like that. And before I got her, I was a puppy raiser. I raised 8 puppies for this organization. Just like you're talking about when they go to the prison, they were in my home. And trust me, I know what it takes to raise a puppy. Jan Peterson here was also a puppy raiser here, done just as much as more than I have. And so these dogs are absolutely wonderful. So I just want to reinforce. And although it's not service dogs for vets, these service dogs are wonderful. They save your life, and they're just, she's my best friend. So, thank you.
And he didn't have to go to prison. Right, didn't have to go to prison.
My house may have been prison.
Yes, ma'am.
How does Rusty get rewarded?
How does Rusty get rewarded?
Okay, so Rusty is a lab, and he's very food motivated, okay? So, anybody's ever owned a lab, okay? So I reward him sometimes with just a little small piece of kibble. Rusty, leave it. Or I reward him with a hug or a kiss. He's got a girlfriend over here, Rusty. And so most of the time, though, if I'm out and just doing my daily thing, the best reward he gets is just doing his job. If I have a treat on me, he gets one. If I don't, he's perfectly content with just doing his job. He's a very serious, he stares at me, and he's kind of creepy almost sometimes, as much as he stares at me. Okay, but he's very serious about his job. Good question, thank you. Anybody else?
Zach. You.
Sir?
Thank you. Yeah. Stay.
Does he remove you from a dangerous situation if you're in a store and there's a fire or active shooter? Will he pull you towards the door?
I think I heard him. Will he pull me towards the door if there's like an emergency?
Fire or active shooter?
Yes, absolutely. So like if the fire alarm goes off in my house, I would not hear it. And so that was one of the biggest things that gave my husband peace, because he travels a lot for work, and so he would leave me, and he says, Gretchen, by the time you smell smoke, it's going to be too late to get out of the house. So Rusty will, yes, he will take me to the closest exit door, and that can be even in a public setting. Like one time I was having a really nice dinner and something was burning in the kitchen, and Rusty pulled me out, and I didn't pay for my meal, and it was kind of an issue. I had to go back in and tell him, I'm sorry, I'm coming back, but my dog wants me out of here. Something's burning in the kitchen. Yeah, great question. Yes, he will do that.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
One of the things that I think you could really help with your talks is the VA is really pretty much disenchanted with the whole dog program. They provide zero support unless it's trained by a $50,000 trainer. I was unaware that those were available to us, so I rescued my own dog, and I've hired a professional to help me train her. She's kind of on probation here today because big dogs are a problem for her. But had I known, my psychiatrist and my doctor both would have said, yes, you need a dog, and I would have got one, and they would then have provided the care. But we're so close together now that once she's gone, then we'll talk about a prison dog. but that might be something you might mention. I don't know how many of y'all in here are, I'm 100%, 80% PTSD and 20% jerk, so it's just, well, you know, Corporal of Marines, what do you expect, Sergeant Major? Thank you for coming.
Great question, and I'm going to address that. And
thank you
thank you for the great question. I'm going to address that. Thank you for the challenge. I was just on Capitol Hill last week for that very purpose. And if you get on my LinkedIn page, it's Gretchen Evans, I think, you can see where I went up before Congress and we talked about how important these dogs are. And the VA has stepped up a little bit. They're very particular about where the dogs come from. And they're very not supportive about dogs that have been rescued. But if right now, okay, and we're trying to change that, but right now, if you get a dog from an organization that is certified and with almost all disabilities, there's what they call the dog of record status. So for me, Rusty is considered a prosthetic. Just as if I had had my legs blown off and I needed a wheelchair or prosthetics. I lost my ears, my hearing, if you will, and so they provided me with a hearing dog, and they pay all his veterinarian bills. And the dog, of course, was given to me for free. So it's not, we haven't totally solved the problem, but we're getting there. And at least the VA recognizes that they need to step up, and this is not something that we want, but something that we need in order to get our lives back. So that was a great question. Thank you very much.
I'd also like to add that this afternoon, Gretchen's going to the VA, and we're meeting with the program director for the service dog programs nationally, and then the local VA, to start to talk about how we can bring more programs, more dogs into our community. Gretchen's visit has been a great catalyst for helping us start to get those connections, and we're new, so we're gonna be part of this and continuing to help. Because I agree with you, there are many different ways to get a dog that's going to help save lives, and it's not just through the certification programs. Other question? Yes, you want to make another comment? Yes. Here, let me, so that everyone can hear you.
I worked for the VA for almost 30 years as a social worker. I ended up down to the Indian Res for 7 years working with those guys. I worked at Mountain Home. I was with the 366 when they hit the towers. Been there, done that, been up on those ridges. Couldn't medevac guys fast enough, seemed like. But one of the things that I think would be the most profound is to have a meeting with those who see guys like me or women like me and tell them, if these guys are having struggles, talk to them about a dog and how to go about doing that. Because there are so many really good organizations out there to provide them. But if you're, like me, I was unaware I was even eligible for one. Well, that's all right. Tinkerbell does good.
Tinkerbell?
Tinkerbell, what other Marine would have?
Tinkerbell, yes, that's a Marine name, Tinkerbell. Sir?
Can we make a cash donation today?
Oh, I take cash.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, Dale does.
That's the answer. Other questions? Yes, Sue.
Could you tell the folks where your shop is, where your business is, so they know how to get to you? Because it wasn't listed on the pamphlet.
Yes, we're on Chinden Boulevard, right across from the Riverside Hotel. Brand new building, brand new facility. That's our first of 4. And please, if you ever want to do a tour or anything, we're more than happy to show you around. But also on our website, you can see up there Dogtopiafoundation.org. You can go up there to see a lot of the work that's being done, and you can donate directly there to the foundation as well. We will take cash donations as well. Gretchen, I have a quick question. Yeah, okay, yeah. Certainly.
Related to the fundraising, can you do like a recurring monthly donation type thing? Okay.
Yeah, you can do recurring monthly, and for our pet parents, we actually encourage them to donate just $1 a week. When they pay their bills, we ask them to just give us $1. And if all of our pet parents do that, we would sponsor 3 dogs a year just from $1 a week. So that's a great question. Gretchen, what happens to the dogs once they retire? You've retired and done something with your life. What happens for them?
So my first service dog is at home with me and is living the glorious life of the most beloved pet ever. Okay. So the veteran has an option with, and this is for America's Vet Dogs, they can certainly keep their dog, and you couldn't pry that dog out of my cold, dead hands. Okay, I love that dog. She saved my life. Or if the veteran feels like that, they need a new service dog, but they cannot manage 2 dogs. America's Vet Dogs will take the dog back, and they will ensure that these service dogs, which are almost a perfect dog, go to a loving home. And so we have an adoption part of America's Vet Dogs, that people who want to adopt a dog that's 7 or 8, that doesn't bark, knows about 1,000 commands, and is like the perfect pet. And we have no trouble placing these retired dogs. Most veterans keep their dog because that bond is so strong. But sometimes you can't, maybe you live in a place where you can only have 1 dog, okay, and you need a new one because, you know, when the dog hits about 11 or 12, they're done working. It's a lot of work to be a service dog, and we want to treat them properly. So that's what happens to them. Good question.
Good question. Another question is, when dogs are small, being raised, do all of them succeed at becoming a service dog? And do they all succeed at being the service dog they were meant to be, meaning, or do they have to be trained to a different?
So no, not all the dogs make it through the program. The America's Vet Dogs has a very rigorous training program because this is their brand, and these dogs are out in public. You know, I'm a keynote speaker, motivational speaker. I travel all over, you know, the United States and abroad and big companies, and these dogs have to behave. And he has to be able to fly on an airplane and behave himself for hours, and he has to sit while I give a keynote, and he has to be able to live in a hotel and all these kinds of things. So knowing that the training program is very rigorous. The dogs that don't make it, because sometimes, honestly, there's nothing wrong with the dog, they just don't want to be a service dog. They want to be the beloved lab that lays at your feet, and they don't care that somebody's at the door, okay, which is problematic, okay? So we identify those dogs, and they go into the adoption program. And so you can adopt a dog that's perfect in every way, except they don't want to work, they want to be the beloved pet. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And you can go to the America's Vet Dogs website and look for the dogs that are up for adoption. And they'll tell you, the dog didn't want to work, or the dog maybe was a little skittish, because, you know, these dogs have to, you know, stand at a train station with trains going by. We expose them to everything, okay? And not all dogs are made to be that, and that's not their fault. And so we try to find great homes for our dogs that don't make it through the program. What was the other question you asked me?
Switching them to...
Yeah, okay, so these dogs are not cookie cutter dogs. So before you get your dog, America's Vet Dogs does a pretty extensive interview with you. They ask you what all your physical needs are, and then they ask you what your emotional and mental needs are. And then they ask you about your lifestyle, okay? And so the part of the reason I got Rusty, and he's a little bit of a nutter, is because I live a very nutter life, okay? So I have to have a dog that has a lot of energy because I travel. I have an adventure racing team. You said Team Unbroken. It's an adaptive racing team. We go all over the world and we compete in crazy races. If you haven't watched Amazon Prime, it's currently airing Team Unbroken. It's all made up of people who've been kicked to the curb in life and something horrific has happened to them. And we travel all over the world and tell our story. So Rusty, I needed a dog with a lot of energy. Well, that comes with a dog that has a lot of energy And you have to be a strong handler, because otherwise, you know, he's going to do things he shouldn't. So they, whether it be a dog, this organization is the organization that trained Sully for President Bush, who was 93 when he got his dog. So you couldn't get him Rusty. He'd have killed President Bush, okay, because he would have been too much dog for him. They needed a dog that could walk beside a wheelchair, okay, very peacefully, and open up the refrigerator and bring George H.W. Bush a bottle of water or maybe a beer, I don't know, okay, but that kind of dog. And Sully was that, had that temperament. Sully was a very laid-back, big yellow lab. So a lot goes into the placement. And then that's why that 2 weeks is so important when you go to the campus. They make sure that match fits. And if the match doesn't fit, they won't place that dog with you. Okay? They say, wait, this is not going to work, and then they'll find a dog to give to you. Okay? So that's what that whole 2 weeks is about, is making sure they haven't done an accurate match.
One more is, will you share with everyone your past 3 weeks, what you've done? Because as you said, you're a little nutter. You've been very active.
So when Dale picked me up at the airport, he said, Gretchen, you look a little weary. And I said, oh, Dale. So I had just 3 weeks ago walked from Porto, Portugal to Santiago, Spain, 180 miles to the Santiago. It's a pilgrimage. And I needed some space for myself. This is just coming off the ESPYs. So I don't know if you watched the ESPYs, but that whole Hollywood thing almost put me in my grave. Okay, those people are crazy out there. And so I went to Spain and Portugal, and I walked for 3 weeks. Then I had a one-day turnaround where I then took 10 wounded veterans and took them on a 5-day hike on the Art Loeb Trail in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And we camped out there, and it was beautiful. It was one of my favorite things to do, and I do it 3 or 4 times every year. And we just go out there, and we hike, and we sit around the campfire, and we unpack things that we're carrying, and we leave them on the trail. And that's the whole purpose of that. So then I did that. Then I jumped out of an airplane the next day, okay, which is fine for me, but I had really bad winds, and I'm very small, and it was at a golf tournament, a fundraiser. This is kind of a funny story. Okay, so there's like 500 people standing next to their golf carts, and my landing zone is one of the long putting greens. I come out of the airplane at 10,000, so I'm haloing, high altitude, low opening. I drop to 5,000, and I pull my parachute, and all of a sudden I'm being tossed around like a balloon up there, because I've got high winds at altitude that I had dropped streamers, but I don't know, the wind changed. Anyway, it looked scary from the ground, because the people up there were like, told me later, we thought you were going to die, okay? But I was spinning around trying to slow myself down, okay? So I didn't come screaming in, landing on the drop zone at 45 miles an hour, which would have broke my legs, and it would not been pretty for those people who were playing golf, okay? I mean, it probably would have delayed the game. So I had to collapse my parachute just for a little bit to slow my drop, and so that's a scary looking thing. All of a sudden I'm not under canopy, like a cigarette roll. I kind of rolled it. But I was okay. It was okay. A little bit of a Parker factor, but I was okay. So I did that, and then Dale picks me up at the airport yesterday. That's when he said, you look like hell. And I was like, thank you, Dale. Maybe he didn't say it like that, but I did look like hell. And so I had a day of rest, but I was ready to come out here and knock it out of the ballpark with you.
Well, Gretchen, yes. Oh. Was your dog did your dog follow you in the parachute?
Okay, now is anybody from PETA here? No, I did not jump with Rusty. America's Vet Dog would have had a heart attack. And I've never jumped with Rusty, but I have zip-lined with my first service dog in Costa Rica. And she and I came face to face with a sloth, and both of us were really surprised, okay, that she has zip-lined with me. Rusty's almost my size. He would be hard to jump with. That's extra weight I don't need.
Well, Gretchen, I want to thank you very much for sharing your story with everyone. Obviously, your ability to be as active and engaged as you are has everything to do. So when you say dogs save lives, it really starts to resonate how that gave you back your life, your freedom, your ability to do all this wonderful work. So, yes.
Let's give a round of applause for Dale. He's the one that made this all happen. So if you're able and capable, please give to the Dogtopia Foundation, and let's sponsor a dog for Dale's business so we can get the dog in the hands of a much needed veteran. I thank you on the behalf of, and by the way, if you're a veteran, would you just stand for me so I can thank you personally for your service? There we go. Thank you. I'm so very proud to be among you. Have a wonderful day. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.